Today I'm going to talk about bullshit, which is not likely to be widely applicable or particularly insightful to most. More white noise in the ocean of mediocre, narcissistic, self-important dweebs who really want their childhood toys to be culturally relevant, intelligent, and important. In other words, an editorial. I'm going to show you two boss battles side by side from The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons, and you're going to tell me which one is better. The Dodongo fight contains extended and repeated periods of time in which no meaningful interaction takes place. The moment when the dinosaur trudges forward at a snail's pace, or even when it charges, does not stimulate in any way other than the neat, heavy sound of its footsteps. I'm simply waiting for him to make himself vulnerable so that I can attack him. And that set piece of, you use a bomb, and then the bracelet, gets mundane after 14 years. This sequence of events is an abstraction of a real-world occurrence, combat. In order for there to be combat, there should be struggle, effort. My problem is that these slow walking segments do not require any effort to advance. He's a slow boy, and my ass is a pretty agile kid. The only meaningful interaction which could take place during Dodongo's invincibility phase is the player taking damage, which is just not gonna happen. There are no interesting mechanics in this period, nothing for the player to think about other than strolling to the side of this obscenely forgivingly telegraphed charge attack. On top of my crippling ADHD, this kind of battle feels transparent and hokey to me. Because there is nothing I could possibly do to inflict damage during this phase, I feel the game sitting me down and forcing me to do things the way the game wants me to. I can see the strings to this stage play. This is the part where the big bad monster exerts its dominance over me, the underdog, and if I'm patient and clever enough, I'll be able to sneak a hit on its weak point when it gets arrogant. I will be allowed exactly one hit, and Dodongo will be completely helpless while I do this. This tug of war is scripted. He's vulnerable, and then I'm vulnerable. I have no control on vulnerability. Whether the boss is impervious to all damage or completely vulnerable is clearly scripted, and it feels scripted, and it's scripted. Follow the script, please. And the script isn't particularly exciting, right? Now look at any other boss in the game, the Medusa head. Notice the player and the enemy attacking and avoiding each other at the same time. This is what an actual fight is. This mechanically better represents a struggle because the player has control over offense and defense at the same time. Hitting and avoiding damage takes effort. We gotta deal more damage than we're taking, pay attention to attack patterns, watch our windups and cooldowns, position ourselves in the most optimum way to dish out the hurt. In a real fight, the enemy isn't going to be invincible and dominate for 10 seconds before sitting still for 5. Real people have shorter and more frequent windups and cooldowns. Boxing rules. Punch out. The active, real-time balance of offense, defense, and positioning provides significantly more mental stimulation than when the game was doing most of that for me. The tug-of-war of this fight is not at all predetermined. It is determined by the player's ability to learn and react to the patterns of the game in real time, as well as what tools they use to accomplish this. Seriously, why would you use the slingshot and Pegasus seeds to fight it? He just hits you. He just hits you. What are you doing? So that's the general comparison for you. The lesson is, do cool shit. Don't be boring to yourself. Do cool things and you'll feel good about yourself. Do cool things with your life. Don't be boring. I don't like being bored. This video's pretty boring. Now let's talk about a bunch of other stuff to pad out the video. What's that? You think I'm retarded and impatient? Here's a make you wait boss done right. Aghanim. First of all, this guy can fuck you up with 3 large projectiles moving in different vectors on screen. Secondly, the player must attentively keep both torches lit as the wizard appears on screen in order for it to even be vulnerable. Thirdly, the player— Wait a second, the real one has a shadow? I thought there was no way of telling which wizard would actually take damage. Oh, now it's easy! So even when Aghanim is invincible, the player has multiple things to think about which will affect the tide of the battle. There is interaction going on, there is complexity greater than taking turns to attack, there is effort. I can't believe I never knew that the real one has a shadow. I thought they were all the same. Manhandla is a simple case of wait for the boss to become vulnerable before attacking it, but look at how much is going on here. You have moving platforms in different directions, stranded safe platforms. What even is this guy? It's interesting to look at and draws the eye with its contrasting colors. Each mouth must be destroyed separately and moves on its own rhythm. It shoots projectiles as my ass aims his complex boomerang paths, and it moves faster as each head gets destroyed. There's so much going on here, so much meaningless instant ramen for the brain. Well, now you're going, Steeb, you're criticizing an early game boss and praising later game bosses. You just want to be challenged. This is a baby game. Why are you still talking about Nintendo games? Well, this is what the first boss of Oracle of Seasons looks like. That was fun. I mashed the B button, and loud noises went into my ear holes. You know Dodongo from Ocarina of Time? He makes himself vulnerable pretty quick, but after you damage him, you gotta wait for this whole rolling attack, and it's just a hassle. You just gotta stand by the edge or in the corner, and then you wait. Did you fail to slay Goma in one cycle? Enjoy sitting on your hands and watching her climb the wall, waiting for her to open her red eye so that you can actually interact with her in any meaningful way again. Again, no stakes during the invincibility phase. Waiting. The cool thing is that Dodongo's had more interesting interaction in Zelda NES. Before anything happens, the player must discover how to damage this dinosaur in this obtuse, hands-off environment. Zelda NES didn't convey the weakness too clearly, and it was designed with discovery and mystery in mind. Once the player Google translates Dodongo dislikes smoke to bombos, they can fight proper, a kerfuffle shuffle of weird positioning and trying to plant the bomb in its mouth as opposed to throwing it right in. The Dodongo moves decently quickly, planting can be fiddly. There is a challenge of positioning, and then in later dungeons there's more of them at once. Gotta, all that. That is more interesting than waiting for the thing and then doing the thing. Even though Oracle of Seasons chains two items together, bombing, then throwing into the spikes, it still fails to be interesting due to its scripted structure. And Oracle of Seasons is the good game. Good bosses. Do you need more examples? Shovel Knight. Notice how Mold Knight is vulnerable to attack during his flying charges. Any other designer, Mold Knight would be invincible during this phase, but Yacht Club thought of that, so now players are driven to try this tightly timed strike thrust to maximize damage during the first attack phase. Then, when Mold Knight actually becomes invincible by surrounding himself with fire, he can still be hurt by bouncing the rainbow lava drops back at him. Super good. Note how Shovel Knight can straight up strike through Propeller Knight's parry. You could pogo him, but that safety comes with slower damage output. Plus, if you miss, you're wide open. Charge slashes back and forth, left and right can get this guy down in seconds. Note how the Enchantress, a boss which is designed to be unreachable until Shield Knight arbitrarily decides to give Old Cerulean a boost, can be killed in one phase. She's never explicitly vulnerable. You could pepper her with anchors during the waiting time, but if the player is skilled enough to stay airborne and attack during the window, she's gone. I didn't even know that until I looked up the speedrun. All these bosses can be bested in seconds, and that's exhilarating. Gotta memorize and react to patterns, manage inventory, magic, bomb charges, and the bosses move and attack fairly fast. The mechanics of the fight are like super good. Everyone's already talked about Shovel Knight, so what am I doing? Let's talk about some bad bosses while I have the opportunity. The next 5 seconds are why I wanted to make this video at all. I don't like spiders. I don't like spiders. Oh, someone actually really loves this fight? Oops, you gotta pass. Carry on then. You know what the best boss of all time is? Yoda Difficult. It uses the mechanics of the game to its fullest extent, remixing the previous 7 gauntlets into a 2-minute final exam. Yoda Difficult is the logical extreme of Dustforce. It is monochrome and musicless until the end, silent, somber, still, and stoic. Players are left to their own thoughts and sounds. Yoda Difficult does not expect players to beat it. It doesn't even expect them to get to the end. There is no in-game reward for this. Yoda Difficult is a personal challenge, pushing oneself to absolute perfection. Maddening, in fact, is the months-long journey of on and off grind, never expecting anything to come out of it until one high school morning you passively attempt a couple of times and actually score a SS+ 15 minutes before class starts, and your heart skips a beat. You're sweating, shaking, and shivering from the suspense, knowing that even though you had an embarrassing mistake, you recovered, and now your name is emblazoned on the leaderboard with only 200 or so people in the entire world who beat difficult times 10 to the 24th power. It's so hard, it's kind of luck whether my human mortal body will not make a microscopic mistake in the 2-minute testament of all platformers, but I did it. I did it. And I feel good about myself. Play Dustforce. Please. Please play Dustforce. It's my favorite game of all time. Please play that game. It's good.